I thought it was a bit unfair leaving you with a bunch of philosophy on the element of lines without showing you examples, so here I'm going to give you 3 examples on how I sketch. Example number 1, as I was walking around the West Coast marketplace, I discovered there was a temple next door, and then there's also this sort of nice looking dragon statue. Took a photo of it, and I'm going to sketch that for you. So what I'm going to do is, instead of speeding up my sketch from real time, I will be putting this in a real time manner, so you can just enjoy the lines that I make. But if you think it's too slow, feel free to speed it up. YouTube allows you to speed up the video. As I look at the photograph, I'm thinking of the whole. The sense is always trying to get the proportion correct. I have already imprinted in my head the whole dragon on a piece of paper, so it's sort of balanced against the size of the paper. I could see it transmitted on the empty sketchbook, and I think this is something that you have to do as well as you sketch, so that you don't run out of pages and you don't run out of space on the left or right or top of, you just need to sort of have a good idea the overall shape and how it fit into the overall paper. As a beginner, you were bound to make a lot of mistakes, and when I started sketching, I had so many mistakes it was not funny. But over time, as you get more and more lines experience, you will have the shape imposed on a page, and you start your first drawing, your first line, your first dot, already have in mind how big that size is against the larger shape, the ultimate larger shape that you have in mind. And as some of you might have seen my earlier drawing video, I advocate a complete outline and then the details. It's always drawing from big shape to medium shape to smaller shape, and I try to avoid all the tiny little details if I can help it. But sometimes when you're drawing, you do need to put a few more gestural tiny lines around the edges, partly to remind you what the sort of segments, in other words, if the head, and then the head is joined to the neck and the neck joined to the body, you may want to just put a bit of a marker where the neck and the head, the separation and so on, right? So occasionally I will do that just to give myself, in terms of markers, if you like, where the different sections or segments they are. And then of course, I try to again go back to the broad shape as much as possible. Now, as you can see, it's sort of beginning to take shape. I'm going to leave behind a lot of the details for now and not to worry too much. This is one of the feet of the dragon, and as you can see, I try to get the body, and the thing I'm focusing on is actually the energy of the line. I try to think about the line and then make the stroke, not tentatively making the stroke as if the line itself requires a lot of patching. Patching makes it tentative, and tentative gives the viewer, whoever is looking at your sketch, a sense of uncertainty, and that is just in a way negative. It's in a way create the sense that the sketcher is not very clear or not very confident. I talk about confidence as an emotion you can emote with your line. Think about the line that you make, and if it's a confident line that you make it does come across as a sketcher. So don't be afraid to make confident line. Well, it's better to be confidently mistaken than being tentatively correct, if you like. As you can see, I finished the outline. I'm going to now go into the details within the outline of the sketch. So here we go. More details to flesh out a bit on the beard of the dragon, the mouth, the tongue, I think, or the open mouth, if you like. Some shadow parts underneath the nose, and also the side opening of the mouth. I think the eyes coming out at this point. and that just give a bit of a detail and so on. You realize that after many years of sketching, the details they are what attracts your viewers, but actually they are the least important part of the sketch. It's the broad outline, if you like, the overall shape, the overall construct, that once you get that, it is actually relatively easy just to put in the details, if you like. Did you see the last line I just made? I know it's kind of not very straight. You could use a ruler, but a ruler would just spoil it. It just doesn't spell confident. It spells uncertainty, and it spells a sense of lack of confidence, if you like. So it doesn't matter if it's not straight. What matters is that the line is put down with confidence, and with that, there's a certain amount of energy that you see, and a certain amount of energy that you can sense from the line itself. So based on what I described in the earlier the element of line, or the philosophy about lines, that video, if you've not seen it, please go watch that, because I think I lay down my philosophy, if you like, on why sketchers need to think beyond the physical side of the line. So as you can see, more details, more decorative elements, some shadow bits were cross-hatched with a pen. The lines are so versatile. You don't really need to color it, or even just use monotone or whatever. I mean, you can use cross-hatch to give a sense of where the shadows are and where the the depth, to give a sense of three-dimensionalness to the drawing. Some stroked making, just to create a bit of a sense of where the dragon sits. So that's it. I put down the date and then my name, and I think sketch number 1 example is done. I hope you get a sense of how I draw in real time without the speeded up video that I normally do. Alright, sketch number 2 is a photograph from in a food court in Singapore. This is a typical scene where there are people just sitting around and drinking or eating, and this is lunchtime. Anyway, the way I look at this sketch, it is a very complicated scene. I focus on the man with the sunglasses in the middle, slightly to the left, and then everything else is proportion to the head and the size of the torso of the first figure I put down. That's how I think about the scene. In terms of the size and so on, everything is relatively placed in terms of size and location, compared to where I've placed the first person's head. All the details surrounding is the same thing. It's all relative. The size of the sketch has to be relative. And I think what you need to think about is, in terms of the lines and shape that you're putting down, don't steer away too far from thinking of the direction, the in other words, horizontal, diagonal, and also basic shape of the sketch. Make sure that every shape that you put down is readable. Readable means there is a chance for the audience or the viewer to understand what you're drawing. If it's a chair, it needs to feel like a chair. So that's what it means by or the tiny little feet that you see underneath. It needs to look like a feet, even when part of it is hidden. So as I progress to the side or the edge of the sketchbook, I fully intend to leave white or leave details out from the sketch itself. I'm not going to be worried about the nose or the tiny strands of hairs that each of them has. I just need to give an indications of a figure, a person, that there's some kind of a nose, a protruding shape outside of the head. And that there's a mask at a very high level, just some kind of an indication that there's a mask. And if without any detail your viewer can see what it is, then actually you might want to consider not even putting down the detail, because after all, if the sketch is readable, then why bother with the detail? It's already readable. The more detail you put down is just going to destroy the sketch or muddy it or make it complicated unnecessarily and put too much information when it's not needed. Sometimes you see sketches where there's no eyes and nose, but because it is understood to be a figure, there's really no need to put even more details than necessary. But of course, in our mind, it's always needed to put a little bit of hair, a little bit of nose, a little bit of mouth, just to make ourselves happy. If that's really what makes you happy, then by all means go ahead and do it. But just don't overdo it. Just focus on the big shape. In this case, I'm now looking at the feet. There's a few toes that I put in just to indicate and make it readable. In other words, I always put in enough just to make it readable. And readability is key in all sketches, because you can put all kinds of shapes and lines, but ultimately if it's not readable, that's really missing the point, I suppose. But the problem with most beginner sketches is the opposite of it, which is we put way too much information and our readability gets confused amidst all the other details that we're putting in. So you really need to strive a balance. It takes a while for me to sort of get out of the detail and focus on the big picture, but every now and then I'm still kind of get stuck into the detail mode, if you like, and that I think by default is how everybody sketch anyway. So it's readable in terms of the figures, the people who are seated, the people who are standing, and the line, the diagonal line that you see me place down, that's a very important line. I talk about energy. That line gives a lot of energy into the sketch. Without that line, the whole thing will kind of just hang in the air, if you like. But that diagonal line against the vertical lines, against the horizontal line, provides a sense of energy to the sketch, and I think those sort of lines are very important. Don't ignore it. In fact, design it into your sketch if you can. If not, then look for opportunity to place those diagonal lines into your sketch. So now at this point, I'm going to the edge of the sketchbook again. I'm being very, very careful. I don't really want to put too much detail. I want it to be readable, and I want it to just give you the sense of somebody walking and somebody, there's a figure on the far right, and then there's another bigger, nearer figure as well. Some details in the background, not too much, just to give a sense that there is some sort of cabinet, some lines, and again, the vertical line contrasts the one diagonal line I've placed. And that's always good, because contrast is the key to interesting sketch. Somebody holding a big plastic bag on the far right. I'm not going to sketch everything in, but I'm just going to put that line in, and I think that's it. So a sketch like this, it's very easy to do. It didn't take more than 10 minutes. In fact, it takes only a few minutes to do, and I hope you like and try this sort of sketching. And now we're gonna do something a bit more dynamic, and that's the man on a motorcycle. I've already pre-drawn something else before. On the same page, I'm gonna outline this motorcycle. As you can see, what I do is again the same thing. I do the whole outline, the gestalt, basically looking at the entire shape as one, making sure the ratio of the head against the bike and the tire against the mirror and everything else works in good ratio to each other. Remember, it's all relative. If you shrink the head, you need to shrink the bike. If you shrink the bike, you need to shrink the head. Everything is in proportion. So when you look at the photo, that's what you're trying to gauge, the overall sense, the overall gestalt of the entire shape, if you like. So round about this point, I finished up with the outline. See, I connect the dot, and that's it. That's the entire outline, and it kind of gives you a sense that the proportion is kind of correct. So having the outline drawn, your job now is to go into the inside to fill in the blank, if you like. You've got the outline more or less done. Now you can, from the outside in, you could basically get more details, more little fingers, hands, the handles, the brake, the front of the bike, where the lights are, and you can start putting in shape as you see based on the photograph that you already that I've already shown you. So there's no secret, nothing extraordinary. It is just copying down the details, and of course now you're guided by the overall shape, which is always very, very helpful. And even at this stage, you have to remember, don't put too much detail. Put enough for the sketch to be readable. Put enough information so that your audience know what exactly you're trying to draw. And if you have, mysterious shape or mysterious, stuff that you're putting down, you will only confuse your audience. So my advice is, do as little as possible of the confusion. Stay to clearly definable shape and something that you can read. If you can simplify the sketch, even though you can see it in the photograph, you as the artist have every right to, artistic license, do the simplification. There is nothing against you from your freedom to do exactly that. So almost done with the sketch. Final touches, more or less there. Maybe a final touch on the shadow, just to indicate if I ever want to put colors, that will be the shadow of the man on the bike. So that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video, and let me know if it was helpful or it wasn't. And I'm still learning how to make videos, so appreciate all your comments very much. Thank you. Bye.